keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song, keep him singing by singing along. I'll tell you of a man, Pete Seeger is his name. His music and folk singing have earned him much fame. And I'll tell you a story about the life that he's led, the road he has taken, few may dare to tread. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song, keep him singing by singing along. In this land of the free, he took many a bold stand and found himself in prison from stage and TV band. But still he never wavered from the course he felt was right. He kept his light shining like a beacon in the night. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song, keep him singing by singing along. Like a redwood in the forest, he stands so proud and tall, for peace, love, justice, and dignity for all. Now some songs come and go, and some you outgrow, but his songs, like the river through our lives, will ever flow. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song, keep him singing by singing along. I'll tell you of a man, Pete Seeger is his name. His music and folk singing have earned him much fame. And I'll tell you a story about the life that he's led, the road he has taken, we all may dare to tread. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song, keep him singing by singing along.
And that was Pat Lamanna. And this is WBAI New York, 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. And coming up right now is Ecologic with yours truly, Ken Gale. And this is going to be a special about SeegerFest.
Remember the slogan of the great French biologist René Dubos: think globally, act locally.
300 years ago, Sir Thomas More invented the word utopia, where everything was going to be hunky-dory. But now we know it's going to be a green-powered Earth, and that'll be Solartopia.
Was there an Adam? Was there an Eve? Or did we evolve from what we conceived? Either way, we got what we needed when the sun shone down on the Garden of Eden.
Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia.
get that apple, and the garden was lost. And so we had to work to pay the cost. And so we went digging into the ground and started to burn many things we found. But don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world?
Well, we multiplied, we needed more. The rich got rich, the poor got sore. The fuel ran scarce, the price jumped high, and so they gave nuclear power a try. But
don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world? But the nuclear plants were built in haste, with too many risks and no place for waste. And so from Seabrook to Shoreham town, we have to shut those new plants down. But don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world?
Now we're fighting wars over oil and gas. No matter who wins, it will not last. The earth is scarred, the planet is warming. Don't you think that all of it's a great big warning?
Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world? We'll learn to power houses and cars from the light that's made up in the stars. It's a gift to share that's always been given. It falls down to earth like rain from heaven. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world?
one more time.
Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia, solartopia, solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a solartopia all over God's green world?
This is the wonderful, positive way of approaching the problem. Don't just say don't. Let's say do something good. And this is the most exciting time in the world to be living. There's never been such an exciting time. Wind power, sun power.
And this is Ecologic on WBAI, and that was Dar Williams and David Burns, who are two of the performers at SeegerFest, along with, of course, Pete Seeger himself and the Rivertown Kids. Every day is Earth Day. I'm Ken Gale, and this is Ecologic for July 8th, 2014, here on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. Now, there is always much more environmental news than I can possibly cover in this segment of Ecologic. And now there is another source. Environment TV is now doing a weekly environmental news magazine. It started only last month, and I am pleased to announce that Rebecca Miles is one of the reporters. Yep, Rebecca Miles, formerly of WBAI's Evening News. Now, I'm on it too, but I'm just so glad to hear Rebecca's voice doing news. Go to www.theenvironmenttv.com as soon as Ecologic is over. The third episode will be up tonight or tomorrow. theenvironmenttv.com. And I'm posting information on Ecologic's Facebook page rather frequently, too. It's WBAI Ecologic, all one word, no spaces, no dashes, WBAI Ecologic. Now, the East Harlem neighborhood where that methane explosion took place on March 12th looks pretty much the same as it did soon after the explosion. Windows of surrounding buildings are still boarded up instead of being replaced. People are still homeless. Gas is still turned off in nearby buildings. The accusations of city services being slower than normal in poor neighborhoods seems pretty accurate to me. There was a city council hearing on gas and water infrastructure throughout the city on June 18th. I have a link to video from that hearing on my EcoLinks page. In fact, the last of the pictures on that page is a link to my testimony. But the people of East Harlem want a hearing in their neighborhood. They are sending a delegation to the National Transportation Safety Board press conference in Washington. And to pay for the transportation, they're having a party this Saturday, July 12th, at the Solidarity Center, 147 West 24th Street, second floor, between 6th and 7th Avenue, from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. I can't mention the price of it, but it's going to be, it's very inexpensive. Again, that's the Solidarity Center this Saturday, July 12th, 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., 147 West 24th Street, second floor. There are 2 studies about the huge amount of methane coming out of natural gas fields that have been published in the journals Environmental Science and Technology and ACS Sustainable Chemistry and Engineering. U.S. gas fields emit more methane than the world average, and those fields are worse climate contributors than coal. And from EcoWatch.com, the Department of Energy website, and the American Bird Conservancy comes this. The Department of Energy announced on July 1st the first step towards issuing a $150 million, million with an M, loan guarantee to support the construction of the Cape Wind offshore wind project between Cape Cod and Nantucket Island in Massachusetts. This project was proposed many years ago and immediately opposed by the Democratic Party leadership in Massachusetts on aesthetic grounds. But party leadership in Massachusetts now supports it because of the energy and jobs produced. Cape Wind is to be 131 400-foot-tall wind turbines, would create 360 megawatts of electricity, and will eventually cost over $2 billion, billion with a B. The American Bird Conservancy mentions it's the first of 17 proposed offshore wind projects, none of which, including Cape Wind, have been approved by the Federal Minerals Management Service, which regulates offshore wind projects, including development, shipping lanes, and fishing rights, and still needs to do an environmental assessment on the Cape Wind project. Makes me wonder why they got their loan guarantee already. The fossil fuel and nuclear industries have been cultivating friends in Washington and all the state capitals so that they can get laws passed that are in their favor. Their friends in Washington have gotten them billions in tax subsidies, hundreds of billions, actually. And that's your money, folks. The nuclear industry has also gotten the Price-Anderson Act to make up for the lack of private insurance. The fossil fuel industry has gotten exemptions from the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Drinking Water Protection Act. So what's an environmentalist to do? Often we win locally. In New York State, over 170 municipalities have passed bans on fracking, which is a way of extracting methane to sell as natural gas that pollutes local air, pollutes local water, and lowers property values. The gas companies took it to court and lost. On June 30th, the highest court in New York issued a precedent-setting decision to allow local control over fracking. If a town or township doesn't think even the promised money is worth losing clean water, clean air, or property values, they can ban it. This is especially valuable to farming communities like in wine country, which would be lost if their water got poisoned. And you know, terrorists cannot take away the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. Terrorists are not anything like the threat that we face from our own government in the name of fighting terrorism. My EcoLinks page will connect you to the full versions of most of the articles I summarized just now. That's www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-links.html. Also on my website are direct links to hear past Ecologic shows on the WBAI archives. There's my show on bird migration from 2 weeks ago. Many of you may have not realized that show went over the air because we were off the air less than an hour before it. But whatever the problem with Verizon was, it got fixed by the time Ecologic was ready to go. But also there are parts 1 and 2 of my Pete Seeger tribute, 2 climate solutions shows, the show on the 3rd anniversary of the first day of the Fukushima Daiichi disaster, with updates on nuclear power and solar energy, a show on the gas explosion in East Harlem, the show on wind turbines and wildlife, and the show on the electricity cable from Canada and all those dominoes. And WBAI might be moving its transmitter soon, but will stay on the air. This might improve your ability to hear the station or might make things worse, depending on where you are. It should lower our expenses, though. When your air or water is clean, thank an environmentalist. If not, become one. Enough said. Thanks, folks. The studio is full of people. Besides Environment TV, we have Kitama Cahill-Jackson, Pete Seeger's grandson. We have Tom Chapin, Harry Chapin's brother, and we have Abigail and Lily, who are Tom Chapin's daughters. So all of you are known by your relatives more than you're known for yourselves.
That depends on who you talk to.
Yes. So,
pleasure being here. Thank you.
And I guess all of you have been on BAI before.
In various places. I think, when was the last time you guys were on?
Well, we were on it at the Clearwater Festival last year, actually. Yeah.
I had you on the air from there once or twice, and Tom a couple times.
Sure.
And so it's a pleasure to have you all on together.
We're thrilled to be here and thrilled to be talking about SeegerFest, which is hopefully the beginning of a long run of events through the years, celebrating the great Pete Seeger and his wife Toshi, that we lost within the last year. And the reason I'm in this music really is because of Pete and, of course, his fellow travelers, the Weavers. I was 12 years old when I first heard the Weavers at Carnegie Hall, and my brother Harry got a
Was that the reunion concert?
Reunion concert, which was I guess recorded in 1955.
Yeah,
we heard it about summer of '57, I think, and Harry said we could do that, and he got a 5-string banjo and got the Pete Seeger book and began to play. And I got my first guitar. My younger brother Steve got bass, and we were the Chapin brothers. And here we are, a mere 7 years later, and the Chapin Sisters are singing.
Yeah, isn't that cool? So, Kitama, since you're the primary organizer, tell us more about SeegerFest.
Well, Grandpa died in January, and I was there by his side. We invited lots and lots and lots of different relatives and musicians in. Pretty much, I went through my cell phone and if they were a musician, I brought them in to sing to my grandfather. And unfortunately, while Tom, Lillian, and Abigail, Chapin, are in my cell phone now, that I didn't know them very well then, and they weren't then. So so they did not come to the hospital that weekend when he was in the hospital. But we had this whole weekend of music. Judy Collins, Peter Yarrow, Guy Davis, Pat Humphreys, David Amram, singing to my grandfather in his final hours. Judy Collins came in and he hadn't moved in a day and a half, and he heard her crystal clear voice, and he put out his hand to hold hers, and she held his hand and sang to him.
But she sang Amazing Grace, did she?
I believe she did. Yeah. I believe she did. It's a little bit of a blur. It's hard for me to know exactly what everyone sang in those 3 days. But what I do know is the day after Grandpa died, I called up Judy and asked her to come sing at the memorial this summer. She asked me when it was, and I was like, oh, I better make a date. So I decided on my grandparents' wedding anniversary, July 20th, which is a week from Sunday. And then I basically built a 5-day event around that one date, because I realized I couldn't encompass everything about my grandparents in one 3-hour show, even though it's going to be a great 3-hour show at Lincoln Center with Tom and the Chapin Sisters and Guy and Judy, Peter, Holly Neer, Dar Williams, the Hudson River Sloop Singers, Magpie, Peter from Peter, Paul and Mary, who I may have just said,
Tony Trishka's coming. Right?
Tony Trishka I just added.
Yeah.
David Amram.
David Amram. Coming with more names. Who else? Who else is on my program?
And 45 more people.
Emma's Revolution, Kristen Graves, ESP featuring Bernardo Palumbo.
Oh wow!
Nice.
I have a group of 5, 6, and 7-year-olds from Washington Heights who have been practicing Guantanamera for the last 3 weeks, ready to come on the show. But even with that didn't encompass all of my grandfather. Even doing a show that size, so I needed to add more programs. So I added a program dedicated to the next generation at Summer Stage that I'm co-producing with Gina Belafonte, Harry Belafonte's daughter.
What date is that?
That is on July 21st.
The Monday. Right.
The Monday, and and then leading up to that, I have lots and lots of local events, including the kickoff night, which I'm most excited about, and that is where the Chapin Sisters are headlining. And I really feel that if my grandfather were here and if he were to choose one event to go to, it would be that opening night, because you have the next generation of folk musicians. You're right next to the Hudson River that he was so instrumental in cleaning up. And you're watching, and after the concert, you'll be watching Pete Seeger, The Power of Song, this Emmy Award-winning documentary that my grandmother was an associate producer on, and was directed by a close family friend and very talented filmmaker, Jim Brown.
Yeah.
And that's Thursday night.
And that is Thursday night,
17th.
July 17th. And then Friday night, the 18th, will be a memorial service up at the Bardavon, which is the only official memorial service for my grandfather. On Saturday, the 19th, we will have a community festival in the South Bronx featuring the Chapin Sisters, the Owens Brothers, which is a group featuring Jeffrey Owens from The Cosby Show. He played Elvin on The Cosby Show, and his brothers are two really great musicians and activists and they're all the sons of Major Owens from the late congressman from Brooklyn.
What are you charging for all this?
I am charging $5 million a head.
Zero.
Every single thing is free. Every single thing has been donated. Lincoln Center, Summer Stage, Hudson River Park, the Bardavon in Poughkeepsie, Rocking the Boat, El Taller, Latino Americano, the Beacon Sloop Club, the Ashokan. These are all places that are hosting different events, and you can go to my website, which is www.SeegerFest.org, to learn about all of these different events. And this is a one-time show, so you're not going to get it again next year. It will never happen again.
Now, there's a big connection between the Chapin family and the Seeger family that goes back a long time.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we started because of Pete and the Weavers, but then it turns out that my mother's first cousin was married to a woman who grew up with and went to school with Toshi. And so my first meeting with Pete and Toshi was when her husband had died, and there was a memorial service, and it was kind of a outdoor Quaker service where people just got up and sang, got up and talked, and I found myself meeting Pete, and Arthur was the guy who died, and it was the first close person that had died to me. We loved him a lot, and so I'm backstage. I meet Pete Seeger and Toshi, and Harry's back there, and I said, I don't know. They're asking us to sing. I don't know if I can sing here. And Toshi said, "Of course you can. That's what you do." and so we went out and sat, and about halfway through the concert, I'm sitting next to Pete and Toshi, and Pete picks up the 12 string. He goes, "To everything turn, 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 there is a season." And that was my first connection with physically and, meeting Pete Seeger. And I thought, wow, this is the perfect person to sing the perfect song at this moment, at this time. And since that time, we've done so many benefits. I mean, every time I've done a concert with Pete, it's been for a good cause. And I feel blessed that 50 years or so, who knew he was going to last till 94? and still be going strong right until the very end. And I think I did one of the last concerts with them at the Beacon last November. It was the 65th anniversary of the start of the Weavers, and I was there with Work of the Weavers and Dan Burns and myself and Pete, and he came and sang and told us stories about meeting Woody Guthrie and stuff. So there's a long connection. He was very close with my brother Harry, and so it's been a long run.
And you're listening to Ecologic on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. You're listening to Kitama Cahill-Jackson, grandson of Pete Seeger, Tom Chapin, brother of Harry Chapin, and Lillian and Abigail Chapin, who are Tom's daughters. And they are getting ready to perform for us live right here in the little studio in City College.
Ecologic song. Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. Drink the water, somebody.
Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Oh, drink the water, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day.
Breathe the air.
Breathe the air now, children. Breathe it now with me. Breathe the air now, children. Breathe it now with me. Breathe the air now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day.
Work the land, gals, help me.
Work the land now, children.
Work it now with me. Work the land now, children. Work it now with me. Oh, work the land now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. This is the bass part. It goes walk, walk, walk the world now. Walk, walk, walk the world now. Walk, walk, walk the world now. Walk, walk, walk the world now.
Walk the world now, children.
Walk the world now.
Walk it now with me.
Walk the world now.
Walk the world now, children.
Walk the world now. Walk it now with me. Oh, walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. One more time. Walk the world now, children. Walk the world now.
Walk it now with me.
Walk the world now, children.
Walk the world now, children.
Walk the world now.
Walk it now with me.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. And the world will last forever and a day. Yes, yes. And the world will last forever and a day.
I'm sure there's a lot of people at home clapping and in their cars.
Next time you guys got to sing along, just as Pete would have wanted.
And so that was Tom Chapin and the Chapin Sisters, one of the 4 or 5 million different performers that are going to be at SeegerFest, July 17th to the 21st, all over New York City and upstate New York as well. A lot of great stuff, and we'll
be up and down the river.
And I'm not just doing this because I just love their music, because Pete Seeger is one of my very, very favorite environmentalists. There's 3 people I tend to refer to when people ask me who my favorite environmentalists are, and that's Rachel Carson, Donna Stein, and Pete. And part of it is what they did or what they are doing, because Sandra's still very much with us, but also the amount of inspiration they did. It wasn't just they themselves stopping DDT and stopping fracking upstate and cleaning up the Hudson. They got hundreds, thousands of people to help them and to think about it. They got politicians to change their mind about whether it was an important issue or not. There are so many different reasons to admire those 3 people and the zillions of people that they inspired and who inspired them as well. So I could not let SeegerFest go by without devoting a sizable chunk to it on Ecologic. And I'm Ken Gale, and we'll be going until 9 o'clock when the Muslim hour comes in. And one of the things that Pete used to tell everybody is, I'm not a saint. Don't make me to be a saint. If you wrote a book about him, you would get that. And if you wrote a song about him, you'd get that. Pat Lamanna, whose song Keep Him Singing, she wrote while Pete was still alive. And his comment to her after you heard it, after he complimented her on her singing and her writing, was, you didn't mention my faults. And it's kind of interesting because when a person dies, of course, nobody who dies has ever had a fault in their life. And there was a honoring Pete Seeger's vision here in New York City. Donna Stein was on Ecologic before it happened, telling you about it. And Kitama, you were there, and you told a great story that fits right in with that.
I was about 7 years old, and I found this garter snake in our driveway.
A cute little garter snake.
It was a cute little garter snake, and I liked it. I was hanging out with this little snake. My grandpa came out of the house. He took one look at it. He took out a hoe, and he chopped this snake up into little pieces. Each piece was squiggling all around. He threw the snake in the bushes. I still remember which bush the snake was thrown into. And then years later, I found out that my grandfather's a world-famous peace activist. and I was just shocked because, that's not what that snake felt. So I guess, but at the same time, maybe that's what his song Turn, Turn, Turn really means. There's a time for everything. There's a time for peace, and there's a time if you're really...
There's a time to kill and a time to heal, but that was the time.
That was the time to kill.
That was his time to kill.
But that snake couldn't be healed, I don't think.
That snake was not healed. But honestly, other than my grandfather's fear of snakes, he was absolutely petrified of snakes. You could barely even talk about a snake around him. He was pretty much perfect beyond that, It's interesting to realize that they don't make many people like him. And the reason why I'm doing SeegerFest in so many days is because he wasn't like most people. Most people, you can do a funeral, you can do a memorial in 3 hours. With him, you just can't. He was just involved in too many causes. He wrote too many songs. He was involved in too many communities. Plus we have like 75 Seegers alone. So, he really was like none other. And I think he really spent his entire life creating a community because he didn't have that as a child. He was raised in boarding school, was put in boarding school at age 4. And he didn't have that sense of community as a kid. Someone came up, there was a story I knew about when I was a kid. Someone came up to my grandfather after a concert and said, "Mr. Seeger, I've come here to kill you tonight. But after hearing your music and after hearing your words, I can't. I just can't bring myself to killing you," basically. And his life was changed.
Didn't Toshi ask him to?
Yeah, and then my grandma stepped in and
You have to talk to him.
and said, "You need to talk to him." And Grandpa sat with him and sang, "Where have all the flowers gone?" And the man said, "Now I finally feel clean."
It's an amazing story, and it's and an amazing movie. And so, give the date of that movie again.
Pete Seeger, the Power of Song will be playing at Pier 46 by the Hudson River on July 17th at 7:30 p.m. And the Chapin Sisters and others will sing before the film.
So Pier 46 would be 6th Street on the Hudson River.
No, it's
46, yeah.
Yes, it would be 6th Street. That's not what it's called, but that is what it would be.
Right.
It's Charles Street on the Hudson River.
Yeah, you subtract 40 from the pier number, and that's the street that you're near. So I guess a lot of people learned something today about how the pier numbers are figured. But at any rate, music and movies, and now we haven't heard other than singing from Lillian and Abigail.
Well,
so introduce who is who.
Okay, sure. I'm Lily Chapin, and my sister Abigail can introduce herself.
But you just did.
That's right. That's her voice. That's what it sounds like. So we grew up in the Hudson Valley in Piermont, New York, which actually is called Piermont because it's a mountain and a pier, an amazing landmass that goes out into the river. And when we were kids, the Clearwater used to dock there about once a year. And we went to schools that knew about the Clearwater because every elementary school in the Hudson Valley does. And we had a connection to Pete Seeger through our dad, through folk festivals. But we also, whether that was happening or not, if you went to elementary school in the Hudson Valley, whether it was a private school, public school, you saw Pete Seeger perform, you saw the sloop singers, and you got on that boat at some point, unless you decided actively that you wouldn't. It was a part of our community, and we all learned about the river. And we still continue to have that love and that memory. And the river is such a huge part of our upbringing, and we now live back in New York City again after a hiatus in California, where there's nothing quite like the Hudson River out there. But they have their own LA River, which certainly needs some love and some cleaning up as well, if you can call it a river. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is how you spoke about Pete influencing others to do good work, and that touched on what I just said, that we all were so influenced by him, even as children, before we even knew that we were influenced. But also as singers and songwriters, he was so generous with the songs that other people wrote. He was such a gifted songwriter, and he wrote his own music, but he also sang and shared folk songs from the past of all genres. And we've recently been delving into some music history ourselves with a lot of old duets and songs from Appalachia and old country tunes, old folk ballads. So we thought today we would do one of those for you, kind of in that spirit.
This is has a little darker bent than most songs you'll hear at SeegerFest, but it's in that great tradition of English folk songs that became American folk songs that really explore the dark side of people.
And if the guy who had come to your father's concert with the gun had heard this song before the concert, maybe he wouldn't have brought the gun. It has a message at the end. You have to listen carefully for it.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
down in the willow garden where me and my love did meet. As we sat a-courting, my love fell off to sleep. I had a bottle of burgundy wine, my love she did not know. So I poisoned that dear little girl on the banks below. I threw a saber through her, it was a bloody knife. I threw her in the river, which was a dreadful sight. My father often told me that money would set me free if I would murder that dear little girl whose name was Rose Connolly. My father sits at his cabin door, wiping his tear-dimmed eyes, for his only son soon shall walk to yonder scaffold high. My race is run beneath the sun, the scaffold waits for me, for I did murder that dear little girl whose name was Rose Connolly. For I did murder that dear little girl whose name was Rose Connolly.
Wow. So that was Lillian and Abigail Chapin, the Chapin Sisters, who will be performing several times during SeegerFest. And so you've got 250 different musicians, 30 volunteers, 16 sponsors. I mean, goodness, how did you organize all that? And this is Kitama Cahill-Jackson, Pete's grandson.
I still am organizing it. And the Chapin Sisters are the only group that I have invited to perform at every single event. And lots of people have asked, but it's to do it as well. But it's but they really have a special connection with my family, with folk music, with activism that is current, inspiring new people, going forward, and then also going, and then also really honoring the past in terms of traditional ballads to their own families with Tom and Harry and Steve and my grandfather, to other family friends like Judy Collins, to all these people that played a role in their lives that they're taking pieces of and then moving forward and developing new audiences who may have never heard of Tom or Pete or Judy.
Well, I mean, I have two questions at the same time, and they're sort of the opposite. Is how are you going to limit the number of people who are going to want to go to this free event? And at the same time, how are you letting people know it's happening?
My grandmother passed away last year, and the day that she died, my grandpa and I sat on our porch of the house up in Beacon, and we started making the list of who was going to play at the memorial. And we we made the entire list that afternoon that she died. And as we did that, I learned what my grandpa wanted for a memorial for my grandmother and what was important to him. And the big thing that was important to him was that anyone who wanted to come could come. And that's why SeegerFest is an outdoor event. He also loved the outdoors. But it was really looking at anyone who wants to can come. So it's in these venues that if one person shows up and they have a wonderful time and they're inspired to change the world, I think we'll all be proud and my grandfather will be happy. If 30,000 people show up, there'll be a way for them to enjoy it.
Well, with 5 days in all those venues, everybody should be able to see it. But somewhere along the line, I think something is going to be crowded.
Great. Crowd on.
And that was Tom Chapin, also one of the performers. And I did want to mention, because we're talking about the passing, is that at the wake up in Beacon, I've been to way too many wakes and funerals and memorials. A lot of people, and eventually you go to a lot of funerals. And it was so interesting in that there was a little section, where the ashes were, and there were photographs everywhere. And there was a line going past where that was. And every once in a while, somebody would break into song. They would just stand there and stare at the cookie jar, and start singing. And then when one person started singing, then people would start gravitating to that spot, and you'd have a 20, 30-minute concert going on, just one song after one song after one song, and then eventually it would dissipate, and then it would be quiet again and whispered conversations. And then half an hour later, the same thing would happen again with another group of people, that they would just spontaneously burst into song. And I remember being there at one point thinking that this is one of the most appropriate wakes I've ever been to in my life, witnessing that. Although some of the songs, Emma's Revolution, I wasn't ready to hear their tribute song. It just wasn't. I had to run out of the room.
Great song, Pat Humphrey did.
Yeah, it was so moving and so wonderful and so personal, and I was like, oh my God, and I just teared up and ran out of the room. And ended up in another room in the funeral home where there was like a concert going on pretty much the whole time.
That's where I ended up.
Yes,
actually.
I remember you coming in and sitting on the floor. And
Molly Mason and Jay Younger and a bunch of people there. We just started singing songs.
And have you sung this one yet? And everybody says, so what? Whether we ever haven't, it didn't matter. And it was a wonderful room to be in.
One of the amazing things, of course, about Pete was he was a great celebrator and helper with brand new songs, and especially songs about the environment. So I want to sing you a song that my friend John Forster and I wrote about the thing you talked about, the whole fracking issue.
All right.
Rivers running brown, money changing hands, cracking underground, we're wringing every last drop from the land. Just 'cause it's down there, a billion barrels in the shale. Just 'cause it's down there, a-glowing like the Holy Grail. And now we'll let the windmills rust, ride that boom till it goes bust. Just 'cause it's down there, ooh, ooh, ooh. Just 'cause it's down there, ooh, ooh, ooh. Just 'cause it's down there. Chemical syringe, shoot it down the shaft. Hydrocarbon binge, we're all just junkies hooked on gas. Just 'cause it's down there, we got to go and suck it dry. Just 'cause it's down there, don't need no other reason why. But there are people in the way, real live people who will pay. Just 'cause it's down there, ooh, ooh, ooh. Just 'cause it's down there, ooh, ooh, ooh. Just just 'cause it's down there. If there's a sea, we'll fish it out. If there's a tree, we'll cut it down. Tear the top right off a mountain, leave behind the barren ground. A drop of oil anywhere, we'll find a way to make it flow. And that's the way that it will go, the way that it will go. Till somebody says no,
No.
this is not okay.
No.
No begins to grow.
No.
We begin to find a better way. Just 'cause it's down there, we're gonna leave it where it lays. Just 'cause it's down there, we don't care how much it pays. The sweet, sweet water in our spring is worth more than anything. Just 'cause it's down there, just 'cause it's down there, that's the place that it will stay. Just 'cause it's down there, we can turn and walk away, leave the bedrock and the shell. Mother is not for sale, just 'cause it's down there. Ooh, 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 just 'cause it's down there.
Wow. I'm going to try to play that again off of this air jack.
I'll send you an MP3. We got an MP3.
Oh, even better.
I will. And before we're ended, we should end with a Pete song, of course. So let's make just sure we have time to finish up with one
absolutely.
Since we did practice it in the hall.
Yeah. Some of the people from WHCR, who's we're sharing studio space with WHCR Harlem Community Radio at City College, and some of the folks here were just really enchanted listening to you guys practice, and.
That's our best work, is when we're practicing in the hallway.
And one of the guys in particular, you can't judge a book by its cover, because he's not somebody I would have expected to hear him rattle off a whole list of folk musicians that he was into.
Oh, cool.
And how happy he was to hear you guys performing in the hallway here.
Nice.
And it's like, wow, all right. So I think we're going to have a different look in our eyes next time we see each other when,
That's great.
on a Tuesday night here.
It's a very exciting time, this trying to find a way. Here's a guy, Pete Seeger, who started off in the labor movement way back when he was young, learning to sing for anybody in the labor movement. Miners, farm workers, whatever it was. Then in World War II became something was anti-fascist when that changed, and then after the war,
he was in the army.
He was in the army for a while, right? And then, in fact, he got married when he was in the army. Married Toshi, and then comes out and forms the first great folk group, still to my mind the best folk group ever. The Weavers and before that, of course, the Almanac Singers and much other stuff. I'm skipping around here.
Yeah.
But he also, after that, when he left the Weavers, he becomes the activist folk singer who is like the model for all of us who followed. He made 150 records, and the records he put out who are still on Smithsonian and on Folkways, and these records he put out recorded.
And he had a TV show. Which you can find on YouTube.
Wonderful people that were never on public on popular.
And a very young Johnny Cash, who was better known through June Carter than through Johnny Cash, because she was daughter
Sonny
of
Terry and Brownie McGee and on and on.
It's amazing who he had, and we are running out of time. So Kitama, give us another list of where the SeegerFest is, and a few of the people who are going to be performing, and then we'll go out with some more live music.
Tickets. Right? Because I think you do need tickets for some of the events, even though it's free.
All of the events, you can get all of the events except for the memorial at the Bardavon Opera House you need tickets for. So all the other ones, you come, first serve. And you can go to www.seegerfest.org to learn more. And this series features people like Judy Collins, Dar Williams, Amanda Palmer, Anti-Flag, Michael Glabicki of Rusted Root, and Steve Earle.
you know it's darker before the dawn? This thought keeps me moving on. If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning.
If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning.
Some say that humankind won't long endure, but what makes them so doggone sure? I know that you who hear my singing could make those freedom bells go ringing. I know that you who hear my singing could make those freedom bells go ringing.
And so we keep on while we live, until we have no more to give. And when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger. And when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger. So though it's darkest before the dawn, these thoughts keep us moving on through all this world of joy and sorrow. We still can have singing tomorrows through all these world of joy and sorrow. We still can have singing tomorrows if we could heed these early warnings. The time is now, quite early morning.
Thank you, Tom Chapin. Thank you, Chapin Sisters.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Kitama Cahill-Jackson, and thanks for putting on SeegerFest. What an amazing, amazing show that's going to be. And this has been Ecologic here on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. Stay tuned for the Muslim Hour coming up at 9.
Here's an Ecologic song. Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. Drink the water, somebody.
Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me.
Drink the water.
Drink the water, children. Drink it now with me. Oh, drink the water, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day.
and the world will last forever and a day.
This is the bass part. It goes walk, walk, walk the
Come on,
world
Kitama, we wanna
now.
hear you.
Walk, walk, walk the world now. Walk, walk, walk the world now. Walk, walk, walk the world now.
Walk the world now,
Walk the
children.
world now.
Walk it now with me.
Walk the world now.
Walk the world now,
Walk the
children.
world now.
Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day.
One more time.
Walk the world now, children.
Walk the world now.
Walk it now with me.
Walk the world now.
Walk the world now, children. Walk it now with me. Walk the world now, children. Treat it lovingly, and the world will last forever and a day. And the world will last forever and a day.
Yes, yes.
And the